So hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm actually going to be talking about the film that won Best Picture at the Oscars recently on like April 25th, I want to say when the ceremony was. That's the film Nomadland. This film was directed by Chloe Zhao, who worked on a smaller film a couple years back called The Writer. I remember seeing trailers for it back when that came out. I never got around to seeing that movie, but I know she's worked on other films outside of Nomadland. But this is kind of one of her first really big movies. Obviously, it's won Oscars and it's won Golden Globes and things of that nature. It's based on a book, and it's also based off of people who really do kind of have this lifestyle. Um, so I am going to review that film for you today, kind of giving my thoughts on does it deserve Best Picture and all that other kind of stuff. Now that we know that that's the film that the Oscars chose this year for Best of 2020 for Film of the Year. But in Nomadland, you guys, it's about a woman who lost her house, she lost her husband, she's widowed. Really, all she has to live off of is her van, which she can store a lot of things into. And she's essentially just living off the land and becoming a nomad, a person without a home, and going from place to place, finding places that kind of let people sleep overnight in their car and things like that. And so throughout this movie, we kind of find out what kind of job she works at, whether it's seasonal or part time somewhere, while she's kind of traveling the U.S., finding places that will kind of, for people that are kind of like her and things like that. So we kind of meet the other people who are nomads as well, and kind of how that impacts the character Fern, played by Frances McDormand, who's the lead character of the movie. And throughout this movie, we kind of find out why other people are becoming nomads and things like that. So basically, this film is on a journey about her travel across several states of the U.S., finding other people of her kind, kind of how that's encouraged her to live this lifestyle and really not look for a house, and how there are moments in this movie where she connects with relatives again. They kind of let her briefly live with them again, and kind of how she doesn't want to go back to that life again. She wants to kind of become this nomad still and pursue that life instead, just because she's been to the house life and things like that. And obviously with tragedy hitting her home with like this, she doesn't want to go back to that lifestyle unless they absolutely have to. So we basically follow the journey of Vern throughout this movie and her transition into a nomad life. But overall, guys, I actually enjoyed this movie. I thought it was very good at what it was trying to do. I thought it depicted kind of poverty in America in a very, obviously that's something you have to kind of depict unpleasantly in a way, while also kind of truthfully telling you what it's like and things like that. So I thought Nomadland did all these things really well. There's a positive here in a minute I'm going to get into about how the film was shot that I think is actually better than if they chose to choose this documentary style kind of a filmmaking and things like that. So we're going to go over some positives and negatives as to what I really liked about Nomadland, some things that could have done better on, and whether I thought this film deserved Best Picture or not. So for my positives of Nomadland, there's actually a message in this movie that really isn't a spoiler, but I think it's a strong message just because of how effective this is and how true it is and things like that. There's a character that tells Fern at one point in the movie that there's no such thing as a final goodbye. And I think that's a very strong message, because for those who kind of have lost somebody, or for those who are kind of grieving over the loss of somebody and kind of moving on with your life and figuring out what to do next, I think that's a very strong and important message to hold on to, just because more than likely that person that did pass away or who you lost in your life doesn't want you to kind of suffer forever. They want you to kind of move on and find something that will make you happy as you kind of are transitioning into this new stage of your life and things like that. And so I think that was a good message in this movie, that there is no such thing as a final goodbye, just because, yeah, I mean, people believe in the afterlife and heaven, and, people move on and they travel, and people have lives too and things like that. You may encounter that person if it's not really a death. You may encounter that person at some point down the road again and something like that. So I thought it was a very effective moment in this movie, and definitely a good message for this movie. So I thought that moment in particular was very strong in the film. We also learned the lives of other nomads, kind of what happened to them, what kind of tragedy they faced and things like that. There's actually one character I think in particular that actually is based off of a real nomad in real life. So whether the book did this or not, I don't 100% know for certain, but I do know one of the characters in this film is based off of a real person who does really live this nomad life like this and things like that. So we learn about the other nomads and kind of how this affects Fern and her lifestyle too. And like I said, going back to that positive I was talking about from earlier, I like how this film is more personally shot rather than just going a typical documentary style. It's shot like a traditional movie. It's not really a documentary because you don't really have people sitting down and being interviewed and giving you their takes on something, kind of like what Modern Family does on that show and things like that. But it is more personally shot. I do feel like I'm kind of the fly on the wall watching Fern live her life like this, and it's just more personally shot. And I think that's a good choice for this movie because if it was shot like a documentary, it'd feel too traditional. There really wouldn't be anything too special about the movie. So I like how it's more, because it is Fern's journey, and so as a result, because it is personally shot, it gives more personality to the film, and it feels more like it belongs to be shot that way, if that makes any sense. So I really like how this film was shot in particular. The film also does depict how bad poverty can be, kind of how it really is this terrible situation where if you're living out of your van, something as simple as like a flat tire or finding a place to sleep for the night and things like that, it just becomes 100% more difficult than if you had a car and a home at the same time. And so the film does depict poverty really well and kind of how going to soup kitchens kind of becomes a part of your day, and whatever you can find out in the wild or out in the parks or out where other nomads are living is kind of all that's available to you, really. And so I thought the film depicted this thing really well. It shows kind of just how bad it is and just how tragic something like this can be and things like that. So I thought that part of the film, as far as depicting things go, did a really good job in the film. We also get a good understanding of Fern's life and kind of why she's living this life and things like that. Um, we kind of also get to see um, a little bit, not a lot, but we do get to see kind of how the tragedies of her life kind of have impacted her, and kind of there's moments where she's just kind of sitting around observing things, clearly probably thinking about the tragedies of her life and how she got there and things like that. So we get a good understanding of Fern's life and kind of how she's on this journey throughout the movie. And like I said from earlier, this film is beautifully shot. The cinematography is gorgeous in this movie. I don't know 100% sure if this movie won for cinematography or not, but if it did, I think it totally deserved it. And if it got nominated, it for sure deserved that as well. It's beautifully shot. The cinematography is gorgeous. There's a lot of like scenes going from like dusk to dawn kind of thing, and they kind of show the transitions of the day and things like that. So beautifully shot. They definitely did a good job making this movie for sure. For my negatives of Nomadland, though, there's a lot of scenes where there's no explanation as to how Fern like lost a job, or if it was seasonal, or it just kind of, certain jobs just kind of end in the movie. Like she'll work for Amazon, it's just kind of done all of a sudden, and so it's kind of unclear if it's seasonal or not. There's a scene where she works for a restaurant. It's kind of unclear if she just kind of quit or got fired or it was seasonal or something. There's a construction job. There's a whole series of jobs she works throughout the movie, and it's really kind of unclear as to why she left certain jobs or got fired, or maybe they were uncomfortable with the fact that she was living out of her van. Maybe somebody found that out or something. So I thought that aspect of the film could have been better explained, because she does go from job to job throughout this movie, and there's really no explanation as to how certain jobs were lost and certain jobs were gained, I guess. So I thought that aspect of the film could have been better explained. There's also not a lot of big moments in Nomadland. There's a lot of great small moments, and I think that's what makes it as good as it is there's a lot of really great small moments that come collectively into a whole that really make for a great movie. Unfortunately, for those who are looking for big moments in Nomadland or something like that, there really isn't a lot of that in this movie. So go into this film knowing that it's a very small film. There's not a lot of huge moments in it, but the small moments that are really good are collectively as a whole really work very well in the movie. But unfortunately, there's no big moments necessarily. I also thought this film would have benefited from a more narrative voice because there is scenes where Fern is sitting down and kind of getting to know people and things like that. Something as simple as like, "Hey, I got fired today," or "Hey, I lost my seasonal job," or "Hey, my seasonal job was up and now I have to look for something else," kind of thing. There's a lot of scenes where she just kind of goes from place to place, and we kind of don't really know for sure how Fern is feeling on certain things. Clearly, she's sad with the tragedies of her life and things like that. But how does she feel about a seasonal job being done? Or how does she feel about losing a job? Or how did she feel about doing that restaurant job and it's not going on anymore and things like that? So there's scenes like that where, for me as a viewer, I would have liked to have known more of what was going on in Fern's head as these things were going along. Because, like I said, she does go from job to job. It really doesn't explain what happened at each one. And we really don't kind of get informed very well as a result. So I thought that aspect of the film was kind of messy. It really would have benefited from more explanation and more of Fern's thoughts explained to another nomad as to how she felt about a certain situation. So overall, I'm going to give Nomadland an 8 out of 10. I think it's a good film. I actually think it does deserve Best Picture. I wasn't huge on Parasite when that won, but I do think this film for sure deserved the award. I thought it was a good movie. It definitely gave me a lot to think about. It definitely depicted something going on in America that I didn't realize was as bad as it was and things like that. But like I said, certain explanations really needed to be done here. How Fern went from job to job, what exactly was going on from job to job, I thought could have been explained more. Could have benefited from some bigger moments, I felt. And the film would have benefited from a more narrative voice, so we kind of get to learn more about how Fern feels about certain things. But overall, 8 out of 10. I do actually recommend Nomadland. So if you want to see kind of the 2020 film that won Best Picture and why it won it, not a bad film to check out at all. I do recommend Nomadland. 8 out of 10 for me.